the Alt Funds Investment Podcast explores those making investments in the alternative asset landscape, as well as the vendors who service these funds. We provide resources for emerging managers and insights for those in the alternative fund space. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions.
Welcome to the Alt Fund Investment Podcast. My name is Mike Schroeder. Today we're here with Skyler Steinke of Stonegate Global. Stonegate Global is a fund administrator. They're operating both in the crypto and the traditional financial market. Skyler, welcome. How you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Start off the conversation. Would you mind just giving us a little bit about your background, what brought you to Stonegate, and what you're doing these days?
Absolutely. So my background started over 22 years ago, in fact, on the TradFi side, traditional finance, where I started at a broker-dealer. It was my first career job in the finance space. And then moved over to a fund administrator, Gemini Fund Services, now called Ultimus Fund Solutions. And I held various roles, very senior roles there, business development, operations, focusing on helping fund managers launch both public and private funds. So I kind of worked through various aspects of onboarding new fund managers, consulting with managers who are launching new funds, kind of all the mix of operational inner workings there. And from there, I went to Sedrania Fund Services, now for Medium. I spent a few years building out their business development team and helping with kind of their growth trajectory there. So I've spent about 7 years in crypto fund administration. I got involved in crypto back in 2015 at Gemini. And since then, I've kind of dipped my toes both in the traditional finance side as well as the crypto digital asset space, which has been growing in leaps and bounds over many years, right? So I got introduced to Stonegate Global through some colleagues in our space as far as that goes, and just have seen Stonegate come up in various conversations with fund managers I'm speaking with. So it was interesting to kind of get the backstory of Stonegate Global and their institutional focus and long history in the crypto fund digital asset space, right? They've been in crypto since 2013, servicing fund managers, which I believe is the first fund admin in the space. Have a unique technology infrastructure and client service model that really led me down to transition over to Stonegate Global.
Awesome. Yeah, that's 2013. Definitely going back, probably some of the first funds in the industry. So tell us about Stonegate. What are the full list of services that you guys offer?
Yeah, so Stonegate Global is a global technology focused leader in the fund administration space, right? So we cover all asset classes: crypto, DeFi, NFT, crypto VC, Web3, metaverse funds, all alternative investment fund structures such as hedge fund, venture, real estate, private equity, VC, series, SPCs, all various jurisdictions across the globe as well. So Cayman, BVI, Luxembourg, Asia, Singapore, you name it. We're covering all different aspects of funds and how we're handling the fund admin, the global advisory work that we'll do in conjunction with outside legal, regulatory compliance, all the different aspects operationally that need to be handled from a fund admin point of view is what we would handle there. With that, Stonegate Global has been in this space since 2007, so 15 years of operating history. Of that, as I mentioned, they got into crypto in 2013, so the first fund admin in the digital asset space for funds, and obviously handling the most complex types of funds out there in the space. So NFT funds, DeFi, staking, lending, rig mining, liquidity activities, with various tokens, investing schedules. We have quickly become one of the top fund administrators in the world, which is very, very flattering, and just kind of just where the market's going. We have a unique experience and skill set to really service these types of funds, whether there's just not a straightforward open-ended or closed-ended solution, liquid or illiquid as far as it goes out there in the space.
Got it. And for for maybe newer funds starting out in the space, what is, tell us about the importance of a fund administrator and what type of clients need your services.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think just even in traditional assets for funds, an administrator is really needed, right? As a second set of eyes to independently verify and reconcile the books and records of the fund. So I always say from a fund admin point of view, fund administration allows a manager to scale, right? Provide scale and outsourced back office solution to allow them to do what they do best, which is go out there and raise assets and manage the strategy of the fund, trading, do whatever, deploying assets into various blockchain portfolio opportunities, if it's the venture or trading, if it's more of a liquid open-ended fund. So really providing that control around the portfolio as well, making sure from a regulatory compliance perspective, handling the KYC for investors as they come into the fund, and reconciling, calculating the management fee, the performance fee, handling the NAV calculations, everything that needs to be happening from a operational infrastructure point of view. The administrator is working very closely to touch those different data points, and then working closely with the auditor that would handle the annual audit and tax work. So I always say this is a team sport, and to have a good team around you is important, and that's really the crucial role that the administrator would fulfill on behalf of the fund and the manager represented.
Got it. That makes sense. So really taking all the investments from the fund manager, you're calculating those returns, you're doing AML KYC on those investors that are coming into the fund, making sure everything is clear on that end.
Right. It actually even becomes more crucial with crypto, right? So we were just mentioning in general on traditional assets, there's a good case for having administration around that. Those aspects operationally need to happen, right? In the crypto environment, not traditional, but digital assets, it's a crucial endeavor because there's so many different aspects of the portfolio, the investors, how they enter the fund, the controls that are around the portfolio with technology that are needed to interface with their on-chain wallets, connectivity points across different data platforms, brokers, exchanges, custodians. It's not just a one prime brokerage account that the administrator is connected to, right, with the bank. It's many different accounts and different solutions for counterparties that are needed because there's just so many different segments with managers that are chasing different yield opportunities, right? So there's a lot of different moving parts. So it's almost, I would just say it's crucial for managers that are launching funds to really have a fund administrator early on up front versus trying to go back, after they've launched an incubated fund as an example and try to reconcile past history can be problematic. So having an admin, on board early on is really a crucial thing, I would say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in terms of, I guess you kind of covered it there, but somebody starting a new fund, what do they really need to know about fund administration?
Yeah, so I'd say just a couple things. Like I said, initially, scale is important. When you're starting a new fund, you're really starting a new business, is what I'd say. And then with digital assets specifically, you really have to, understand the technology infrastructure and how the administrator is handling the activities of the fund, the portfolio, the investors, different aspects of what's required, from an operational workflow perspective. So accounting, investor servicing, treasury management, those functions are all part of the traditional admin makeup. Well, how does that work in a digital asset environment, right? So what wallets are being connected to? What other technology is required? How is the manager, not the manager, but the administrator handling, in-kind contributions? Can they do that? Can they monitor those wallets? Just verification and controls around aspects of ins and outs of movements with the portfolio and the investors and how that's happening is important, right? Working through APIs, various connectivity points across exchanges, all those things add to different layers of what's needed. So, like I said, crucial points to have for either a new fund launching or an existing manager that may be looking to hire administrator down the road. It's definitely important to have just that set up. And just from an institutional perspective, institutional investors will look at having an administrator involved. And even I'd say on the bank side, a lot of banks and even exchanges now will ask the fund manager who's looking to open up accounts, who their administrator is. So it's becoming commonplace, just as a solution, as part of the team environment, right? That we would operate in, to have that all up.
That makes sense. So yeah, even it sounds like even other service providers in the industry are going to make sure that they have the admin, got to keep a second eye on the books and make sure everything's calculated correctly.
That's correct. Absolutely.
What are some of the typical clients that you at Stonegate? What are you guys working with? In terms of different funds, fund types. What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, it's a mix of many different players in the space. We see more, I'd say, institutional players, institutional investment managers, family offices, global family offices, foundations, endowments, protocols, exchanges. Those are probably new from who's starting funds, right? So exchanges and protocols are actively starting new fund products, both on the venture side and open-ended liquid trading funds as well. So that's definitely a trend we're seeing as far as that goes, and just different types of products even at the same time. So, for example, maybe a venture shop will open up a VC fund and a liquid, maybe fund that's staking or yield farming, or in the DeFi space as an example, or taking a fund, a venture crypto fund, and also doing staking or yield farming in the same portfolio, right? So that'll happen. And then in addition to that, the other layer or trend we see is taking whatever traditional portfolio they have and then also adding a digital asset component to it. So we call those crossover funds, where there's a crypto and traditional assets in the same bucket or portfolio, if you will.
Got it. That makes sense. So some of these funds are mixing digital assets with more traditional assets as well.
That's exactly right. Absolutely.
Awesome. It's cool to see, it all converge over time.
Yes, of course.
Could you tell us a little bit about the competitive landscape and, in your eyes, how does Stonegate Global differentiate itself from other fund administrators in the space?
Yes, that's a great question. So we'll talk about at a high level what the landscape looks like, and then dig into some specifics on trends, and then obviously how we're a bit different in the space. So at a top level, there's probably 650 plus or minus global fund administrators out there in the industry that cover all asset classes, right? I know that there's maybe 8 that handle crypto funds or digital asset funds, a narrow list. And then when you add complex crypto funds, digital asset funds, the list shrinks down to less than maybe 3, right? And we're seeing all types.
Complex. These are with complex. These could be like anything like DeFi. Maybe mixing VC with
Exactly.
liquid assets.
Exactly. So VC, they're doing staking, lending aspects of DeFi in the same portfolio. We see crypto VC funds creating multiple funds. It's kind of a trend where they're creating their VC fund, but also maybe a liquid DeFi fund separately. And then we see, lastly, just fund managers launching maybe a traditional asset product with an aspect of digital assets in the same portfolio, right? So we call those crossover funds. So a mix of everything as far as kind of the trends go. So with that, the expertise that's needed, it's not just a VC expertise. It's not just a liquid trading expertise. It's a mix of everything. So, and then just how administrators set up their business, it can be very challenging because they would usually segment it out by asset class. So they use different systems and technology and departments for one thing versus another. So there can be some complex things that need to be figured out workflow wise that may pose some challenges. So with that, kind of stepping into kind of what our differentiators are. So the first I would say is just our deep bench of experience, being in digital assets and serving crypto fund clients since 2013 now, almost a decade of experience coming up. It's just a huge leg up for us, just seeing different nuances and experiencing challenges for many years. We really kind of, handling, things that come up like in-kind contributions can be challenging for some administrators. That's not a problem. We've been doing that since 2013. So all the different nuances that can come up with, vesting schedules with tokens, things like that, different aspects of trading crypto and other asset classes in the same portfolio, how systems should be set up, the different nuances with workflow, AML, KYC, all that is kind of business as usual for us, which is great. So the first thing I mentioned, which was experience, is huge, right? You need to have that buttoned up expertise in digital assets to handle a lot of different things all at once. The second is technology. So proprietary technology we have in house includes digital assets, not just the portfolio investor accounting systems and portals, but technology automation when it comes to DeFi, staking, yield farming, dealing with on-chain data, NFTs. So those aspects, that are important. So most, and I haven't seen anybody else. Hopefully, as the market matures, this a lot of kind of what's out there becomes standardized, but I haven't seen it yet. Which is probably half the problem that we see just with when managers are looking to vet it, administrators, right? There's just a lot of different things that come up to having kind of a standardized view of services can be challenging as well. But yeah, so technology is a big part of our differentiator, having that to be able to service high frequency trading strategies, algo type strategies, and DeFi as an example. The more complicated it gets, I would say we really, are put ourselves above the rest when it comes to dealing with those types of complex strategies. The last I would say on the list is client service model. So client service model is important. We provide a high touch, white glove service for our clients. So what does that really mean? So really, when someone has maybe a main point of contact as their admin personnel at the shop there for administration, they may sit like in the junior person may sit in investor services as an example, can answer some high level investor services questions when it comes to accounting or something else. They're having to reach out to their team, go back and forth, come back with an answer. So there may be a lot of emails back and forth with the main point of contact, the administrator, along with the manager. And hopefully they're in their time zone. If they're not, then it can even provide more days to the mix of going back and forth until they get that question answered, as an example. So we decided to do things differently, which was having a senior person, a managing director level and above as the main point of contact, not really just be sitting in one department or another, but they can answer everything because they have a 360-degree view of what's happening across the entire organization and can quickly respond. We have a live chat messaging function as well that our clients can reach out to their managers and get questions answered. So that's definitely huge. I would say client service model, technology, and experience are the three core things that really set us apart in this space for sure.
What types of challenges are you seeing in this space? And this, you could be focused on crypto. You definitely highlighted on a few really key factors, on the last point. But what are you seeing in terms of where maybe some admins or even the funds are struggling at?
Yeah, that's another great question. So the challenges, obviously, there's a good amount of things happening in the space. So the first I would say is lack of experience. Maybe a very small group of admins that do service crypto, they have various degrees of experience, right? So it's not that we're all in the same schedule of experience. Everybody jumps into this industry in one way or another. So that can be a challenge. So, for example, some will do only buy and hold strategies. Others will do, some aspects of VC. Some will do DeFi, but not everybody can do everything, most likely in certain cases, right? So there can be challenges there. So I'll give an example. One can be, they're doing buy and hold, but then, so they vet the administrator, they go down that road of kind of just getting their capabilities. And then they want to add DeFi down the road. There's going to be challenges right there. So basically, so expertise is crucial. You don't want to be in a situation where your administrator is limiting your strategy. And that happens, I would say, it can happen quite often. So it's important to ask up front, just to make sure that they cover everything that you're going to be needing from a strategy perspective, not just now, but down the road. So that can be a big challenge initially. The second is honestly the lack of education in this space. The crypto native fund manager has a different thought process and understanding of crypto but they may lack the understanding or education on what an admin does and how they go about it, what's required, what are the controls around the portfolios, things like that are different, right? Versus the other side where a traditional fund asset manager has managed a strategy before, managed a fund, and now they're getting into the digital asset arena. And now what they think should happen based on their experience may not be the exact workflow that would happen in a digital asset environment and in a crypto fund, right? Because there are different aspects of technology, could be different things with investors, could be, how things are traded and how they're reconciled, right? Can be totally different in certain cases. So there's an education process to really go into this on one side or another, that the administrator has to have that knowledge to go into the conversation and say, hey, here's what we think should happen based on our understanding. And a good example of this is with technology. I had one manager come to us. They were already ready to go with another administrator, which is great. And then all of a sudden, they found out that based on what they were trading in their strategy, the administrator's accounting system didn't have enough decimal points to handle the reconciliation of the NAV, right? So things like that.
That's something nobody would ever think about that.
No, if you didn't have the expertise, you didn't have context to what was happening there. You couldn't really follow through. And so they were thinking everything's a go, and then all of a sudden they are looking to do the NAV, and they realize, their tokens are 8 to 10 decimal points out, and that the administrator system can only handle 4. So that little nuance, very simple, right? You would think that's very basic, but if you're just jumping into this thinking this is pretty straightforward, we'll use the same system as we normally use for our hedge funds or VC fund, it can be problematic if you don't understand the aspects of crypto and how things are happening from an app perspective. What's the evaluation methodology? All these different things come up that are a bit different in the digital asset space, and you have to have a team of experts in operations that can really understand that and move forward. So yeah, definitely a big deal there. The other another one would be, I'd say, just we talked about lack of digital asset technology in the fund admin space, which is still a challenge, right? So most fund admins are using systems and technology, honestly, legacy systems that have been around for 20 years old. So the systems they're using on the traditional asset classes, hedge funds, private equity, real estate VC, they're trying to use those in the digital asset arena, right? Which can be challenging. So some aspects of what we just talked about could be an issue. So there's this bolting on of technology to try to figure out, how do we service this client in crypto? When it's not, it's not a straightforward strategy. How do we go about it? When there's NFTs, when there's staking and lending with yield farming and DeFi activities, how do we handle that? Because that can happen. So if you have using a VC accounting system for a VC fund, but now this happens quite often. A lot of venture funds are doing staking and DeFi activities in the same portfolio. So now you have a illiquid strategy with some liquid activity for staking, right? So the system can't really handle that. So how do you go about it? So there's a lot of bolting on of systems and challenges with going from one side to the other that certain administrators are having challenges with that. But with that, all that kind of stems down to issues for the client, right? Delays in service, challenges in technology, delays in reporting ultimately for the NAV package and for the statements that need to go out to investors. So that's the ultimate challenge and issues that are happening in the space due to the various points we just discussed, which was the experience, lack thereof, education, and how they're kind of going and speaking to various managers that are launching products. And then, technology and ultimately client service is suffering because of that. All those different items.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the two points that really stuck out to me there were technology and just, especially for new funds launching, thinking about the evolution of the strategy. There might be a chance there's going to be staking, yield farming. Right. Just kind of want to make sure, every duck's in order.
You really do, because there's a lot of different pieces and everybody's chasing yield, right? So there, what's happening now in a portfolio is, that the manager kind of brings up is great, but sometimes 6 months from now, they want to deploy something else that they didn't speak of in the portfolio. Now they're, they have an issue if the administrator can't service it.
Yeah, I guess even being upfront with your administrator before you start.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get some folks that they want to do everything, in the portfolio, right? And you kind of dig into the details there, and it may or may not fit based on what the administrator can do. That, if they don't have their own technology, if they have some aspects of lack of experience with NFT, whatever the case may be, whatever strategy it is, they really have to kind of go through it and divulge and explain to the administrator everything that they're doing, that they want to do. And there could be, conversations about how they go about that. So yeah, it's definitely an important piece of the process there.
In terms of advice, for a new fund manager entering the crypto space, what type of advice would you give to them as they're looking at fund admins?
Yeah, another great question. So there's probably 5 different things on the list that I would think of from my side, just by way of speaking with hundreds of different managers in the digital asset space, even in managers launching their traditional asset managers launching crypto funds, right? So number one is working with an admin that has a deep bench of experience with all aspects of crypto and blockchain and digital assets. You never want to be limited by your admin, right? So having that understanding and expertise across the team and operations that understands what you're doing from a portfolio perspective, and they know how to do it from admin side of the equation workflow. With what workflow is required, right? That's important. Second thing would be using an administrator that has their own proprietary technology that extends beyond just portfolio investor accounting system and portal. So that would be a big thing. So do they have technology that can support on-chain transactions and data? Or is this a manual process? They're using Zapper, DBank, Zarion, and the others that are off the shelf. Do they have a kind of an automated solution? Can they handle crossover funds where traditional assets and crypto are in the same portfolio? That's another big one. And then we talked about using a administrator that has a service level agreement, SLA, that is incorporated in their admin agreement. I think that's a big one that can avoid and mitigate issues with delays in service with reporting and things like that from the administrator. That's definitely a challenge we're seeing in the industry, and having that SLA in place can really give the manager peace of mind that things are being handled, and obviously they have a delivery schedule of items coming from the administrator that they know when it's going to happen on a monthly, quarterly basis, right? So that's another big element. Yeah, and then digging into the client service model, we talked about that briefly. Just to understand what level of support you as the fund manager will receive, I think is really important. So will you have a dedicated point of contact that has knowledge and expertise to address your questions as they come up, or will this be a junior person that acts as a go-between between operations and the client? Do they sit in your time zone? What's the response time? What does that look like? All those different things I think are crucial in digital assets. There's so many more moving pieces to really, you have to have a sense of what's happening. And so you have to have a team that can support it and really be responsive to address any issues with, not just the portfolio, but with technology, with integration, connecting to various exchanges and wallets, handling that kind of all the different elements that may come up in the digital asset environment, I think is important. And then lastly, I would say this is one that's, it's changed in my mind over the years, actually. So it's come kind of full center with crypto and digital assets. I always say when someone asks for a client reference, with that, I mentioned to utilize your auditor as your client reference. Because what happens, everybody someone asks for a client reference of an administrator. Administrator reaches out to their team and says, "Hey, who's the happiest client we have right now?" And that's who they give to the fund manager to have a conversation with, right? But to have a better overall view of what's happening in an admin's organization, operations, and everything is to really have a discussion with the auditor. They can tell them if there's any delays with reporting, any issues that are happening throughout the year and across various strategies. So any restatements, or misstatements in the NAV, all those different things, the fund manager can ask the auditor and kind of provide a good understanding of where the fund admin is at, operationally. I think that's important, and speak to all those challenges or problems. So I think that's a better view of the organization on the admin side than just providing, the admin's going to provide their happiest customer and they're going to have a conversation with that person. The auditor client reference is a better way to go in my book.
Makes sense. It's a less biased point of view, and you get the get to have a conversation with someone new too. Top of
Absolutely.
that
Absolutely.
maybe could help out your fund. Awesome. So, Skyler, thank you so much. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more about Stonegate?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, number one, stonegateglobal.com. You can also find us, follow our company page on LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn along with Telegram. So happy to engage in whichever makes sense for people reaching out. Absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds great. We'll include that in the show notes, and really appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. It's been a pleasure.